What role does government play in our spiritual lives? Being that we're, as I said, an election, a presidential election, perhaps more controversial than any before, maybe not, but it definitely sounds that way. Maybe due to the fact that the media and technology today is so prominent in our lives, everything is amplified. But regardless, that's not what I want to address. I want to talk about something far more relevant, which is the relevance to our lives. At the end of the day, an interesting question. A young person, a young student asked me just a few days ago. He said to me, I hear a lot of talk, my parents and school and teachers and adults, we're talking about these elections. I think to myself, he's asking me, someone who respects me, he says to me, what difference does it make who the president is? What difference does it make to me? And it was a very simple but fundamental question. With all the talk, sometimes it could appear like we're in an arena with gladiators fighting, and maybe very entertaining, or actually very frustrating and very disturbing. That's what it is to me, at least. But when it comes down to it, here a little child asks a question, like the story with the emperor with no clothes. You all know the story, right? I mean, just to share it briefly, but it's a very good story to capture sometimes, be able to look at things with a set of fresh eyes, the eyes of a child. So, long story short, there was an emperor, a foolish emperor. It's a fairy tale, who but loved clothing. His vanity was most important to him. So he would always buy clothing. He had all the money in the world. He was the emperor. And to the point that he would buy every particular garment that came his way. One day, a charlatan who saw an opportunity came to the emperor and says to him, I see all your garments. They're beautiful. But I can weave for you. I can knit for you a garment that will be the best of all the garments. He says, what will make it best? Asks him the emperor. He says, it'll be a garment that only smart people can see the garment. So you'll always know, if someone sees the garment, they're smart. If they don't see the garment, they're stupid. The emperor loved the idea. How much will it cost? He says, it's very expensive. Material, I have to bring it from exotic countries and from all over the place. Again, long story short, the emperor commissions him, and he begins a job. It's going to take several years. But he doesn't want anyone coming to see it. Once in a while, the emperor can send someone, a messenger. Anyway, he starts the job. Every few months, the emperor is very curious. He can't wait for this new set of garments. He sends a messenger. He's still in the middle. And everyone knew that only smart people see it. So the messenger says, yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. He can't come back and tell the emperor that I don't see anything. And it was actually nothing. That was what this great, brilliant guy came away with. He didn't have to do a thing. But he would go through the motions, and finally the day comes. I can you could obviously dramatize and elaborate on the story. The day comes, and he brings the garment to the king, to the emperor, and all his people come. And he has assistants, and they're all coming, and they're carrying, and nobody sees a thing. The emperor gets undressed. He puts on the garment, first puts on his pants, and then a shirt, and a beautiful cloak. I mean, the whole thing. Nobody sees a thing. The emperor also, of course, doesn't see anything, but no one's going to admit it. And he says, look how beautiful it is. And everyone says, yeah, I've never seen such beautiful garments. Anyway, the day comes, they make a big parade. The emperor goes out wearing underwear and officially these garments. And everybody, the whole capital is coming to see the king, the emperor in these clothes. Everyone saying, how beautiful, beautiful. Nobody wants to acknowledge that they're stupid. Until one child yells out, the emperor has no clothes. I thought it's worth telling this story because sometimes you have to ask the basic question. What's going on? What difference does it make to a child's life? So I know all the political sides will have a lot to say about this. That this will save a life and this will kill a life. And this is going to preserve healthcare. This will not destroy healthcare. I'm not getting into the politics on either side of the aisle. I want to talk about, to you and to myself and to each of our children and to the child within, what does it really mean in real terms in our lives? Many of us are adults. We've seen quite a few presidents. What difference did it really make in our lives? Now, we know it affects economy. Yes, it can affect healthcare. It can affect COVID. It can affect other things. But is there a real difference? And that's what we need to be focusing on. What is the role of government in general? And I'm not here to endorse any side. I'm here to talk about it from a selfish perspective. What's in it for us, for the human race? One thing is clear, that the United States was an experiment that was successful. That over 300 years ago, the founding fathers and the people who came to these colonies created a country that would become a haven for people of all walks of life, of all faiths or no faith. A country based on the Declaration of Independence, that all people are created equal and have unalienable divine rights. That's the foundation of it all, which means that they established an environment that each of us is respected and has rights no matter what. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion. And that indeed captures exactly what a government should be doing. Let's get beyond all the details. The major mission of a government is to create an environment for the growth and health and welfare of the human race, or the people living in that particular country. If every country did that, we would have a perfect world. Now, obviously, there are different opinions what that means, and there are differences between people. Everyone has a different view. You talk about freedom of speech. How do you reconcile two people who have disagreements? So that too is part of the process. But the role of government is to allow us to spread our wings, us meaning the citizens, to spread our wings and to be the best possible people we can be. The founding fathers, though they were deists, recognized that they used the word creator, created equal, endowed by the creator. Why did they use the word creator? I've asked many legal scholars, constitutional lawyers, and so on. Why did they use the word creator? They could have said all people are born equal, or people are equal. You see, I'm using the word people just, even though it says men, they mean all humans. But to even me, but more politically correct, people. Why did they use the word creator? When we have the separation of church and state, creator creates no pun intended, creates sometimes perhaps a conflict even. But because they realize, this is my theory, I've never seen it anywhere, they realize that the only way to guarantee absolute rights would be that it's given to us by something greater than us. Because if human beings give you these rights, then they can take them from you. They can limit them. The fact that it's attributed to a creator means there's a higher force, whatever you call that creator, and that higher force, in that sense, we're all equal in the eyes of God. In the words of the Bible, we're all created in the divine image. A government that upholds that is a government worth valuing and worth respecting. Now, of course, we understand there are nuances and it comes down to many different details. But that's the fundamental element, which is no surprise that so many scholars demonstrate how the United States, the government, is actually based on, it's a great book called On Two Wings by Michael Novak, another book, The Hebrew Republic. They say that the principles, the universal principles upon which this country was built, is built on Torah metaphysics. Interesting word, Torah metaphysics. And this is by Christian scholars. Because the principles that was known as the universal moral code, that really the basis and foundation of every civilization, is the essential nature, true nature of what a government should be. And there are times, especially in confusing times like ours, it's important to go back to the mission statement. To get through all the fog and the smoke and all the distractions and get back to the core principle. Why is government here? It's here to help us create an environment that's peaceful, accepting, and allows and cultivates and nurtures the capacity for every individual to live a spiritual life according to the way they see fit, without ever dictating a particular religion or a particular way. That is it at the core. Once you have that, then people, each in their own diverse ways, will grow, will expand. Now it's interesting, people have talked about freedom of religion. Some call it freedom from religion. You don't need to be religious, which is true. You don't have to. The government cannot dictate someone to be religious in any religion or any particular religion. But the expression is freedom of religion, because they understood that there is an element of faith. In every system, you need some type of faith. Not to dictate that, but it's the logical premise. I sometimes wonder if atheists were running the show and they had written the Declaration of Independence, would they have given the right for people to be people of faith, as much as people of faith giving them the right to not have any faith? Question. I'm not saying it as a judgment, I'm just saying it as an interesting thought experiment. So to go back to it, it's essentially that each of us have spiritual lives. Whatever you call spirituality, it may not be a religious spirituality, secular spirituality, whatever that means. It means a transcendent life. And a government that preserves and protects and helps us achieve that is a government worth following. How do you apply that to this present election? I let everybody decide on their own how they do that. But it's important to get back to that principle. So what are these universal codes, moral code? It's actually called, the universal code is called, some people call the Noahide laws. What are the Noahide laws? 7 Noahide laws that go back over 4,000 years to the beginning of time, beginning of civilization. The 7 Noahide laws is 1, accepting something greater than you are. You can call it a God, call it whatever you want to call it. Name is not significant. As Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev once told the self-proclaimed atheist, he said to him, the God you don't believe in, I also don't believe in. So that's 1. Number 2 is not to profane, not to curse, not in any way defile the divine. Keep it pure. Keep it sacred. There's so many things in life, in the mundane daily life, pedestrian life that we live, that we defile, let's be honest, whether it's intentional, not necessarily always in a way that hurts somebody, but we don't respect the dignity. Keep it dignified, keep it sacred. Because that is the foundation of why we respect each other, that divine image in which each of us is created. That's 2. Number 3, the sanctity of life. Preserve the sanctity of life. Do not kill another person, which really means the honoring of life. Every person's life is sacred. Number 4, every person's property is sacred. Do not steal. Respect another's property. Number 5, respect sexuality, the sanctity of intimacy, which is so much at the core of love, of relationships, of commitment, fidelity in our relationships. Number 6, respect the environment. Respect not just humans, but life around us. Animals, the environment, respect that was also sacred. And finally, number 7, establish courts of law, a system of law and order, of justice, which of course upholds these laws and protects one from the other, especially when people's self-interest can get in the way. That upholds and enforces the laws of that society. If our country and any country in the world would follow these 7 principles, and that would be the foundation of it all, and stick to it, you tell me what kind of world we would live in. And that's what government has to assure. Now you could say, why do we need a government altogether? Why can't we just figure it out on our own? Well, that's exactly what government is, a government for the people, by the people. It's people figuring it out and then saying we need to establish, part of law and order is establishing a government that upholds principles we all agree upon, with a room for diversity and methods of recourse if there should be a disagreement, if there should be a battle or a challenge, I should say. So we have courts of law to address it. The polarization of our time today, I asked myself, if I was able to sit down with the 2 greatest extremes to the right and to the left, and ask them about these 7 laws, and say, what are you going to do to help us human beings live by them? That I can go back to that child and say, here's what a president is supposed to do. And it's not just the president, obviously. We have 3 houses. We have the legislative branch, we have the executive branch, and we have the judicial branch. The checks and balances, all part of making sure that self-interest does not dominate. I would be interested what people would respond to. Now, I know people would say, the other party is going to kill you. I will save you. But let's get beyond the hyperbole and get into the more things are not so black and white. And I think if all of us, each of us and all of us, would demand first of all, establish clarity in our own standards of what we expect from a government. And we demand that, and definitely not become part of the problem, we actually can make a major difference. Because at the end of the day, conflicts happen only when people feel conflicts. If two people want to battle it out. But if we don't become part of it, then it's just two individuals. It becomes isolated, contained. Now, I know it's quite naive, you may say of me, and idealistic to expect that suddenly the country and people are going to calm down. Everything's been so heated up that it's almost impossible to get to some type of sane, credible, sane, sober place. Well, you know what? So accuse me of being naive. Maybe it's sometimes good to be like that child that sees things in a clear way instead of jaded and clouded and distorted by all the prejudices and biases and the different interests involved, trying to inundate us, the propaganda on all sides, trying to convince us. Maybe it's time to stop being part of that hysteria and part of that media hype, whatever side it may be, and really focus on what matters to you, to me, to our families, the matters of love, building relationships, having a healthy life, and all the things I mentioned that are all included in the 7 central principles, universal laws. You know, on our currency, United States currency, something really unique. People don't really pay attention to it as much as we should. Money epitomizes materialism, right? Money. I have, the haves, the have-nots. Money makes the world go round, some people say. We all know it's material, but still it has its, at least the illusion of its power, and money is money. On this epitome of materialism, what do we have etched on our coins, on our dollar bills, on the different, and the currency that we have? What is it? What's etched on it? 2 expressions: in God we trust, and e pluribus unum. In God we trust, the first of the 7 laws, that there is something greater than we are. In the money that we have, it reminds us that there's something greater than you and I. And that greater, and we've been put here and we have a mission and purpose to live up to. The second, e pluribus unum, from many one, which means basically harmony within diversity. Harmony within diversity. The mystics talk about this. It's a fascinating concept, that when you have diversity and different opinions. So what do you do when people disagree? It would seem the only way is whoever's stronger wins. Survival of the fittest. That would seem the way to go. The majority wins. E pluribus unum says that we respect the diversity because the same God that created an individual created also the diverse. And it's the harmony within diversity that we're looking for. Look at nature. Look at the human body. A healthy human body, healthy nature, has diverse systems, diverse organisms. Some of them you'd never think can work together, and they all come together in this cohesive unit. Between 35 and 75 trillion cells are within an individual human being. Trillion. Yes, the only thing more than the deficit. And yet, they work together in a healthy organism. Like a symphony. Different instruments, different musicians, different stages, but they all come together in one beautiful harmony. This is etched on our currency, not in some book of philosophy or theology or some religious manual or in some house of worship, on our money. It's interesting because in the way it captures and reflects the essential nature of what money is and what a government is supposed to be like. To preserve those elements, recognizing that there's something higher than all of us and none of us can play God. Therefore, none of us can say someone is better than another, despite of color, race, background, religion, faith, ethnicity, and so on and so on. And the second thing, that diversity is part of the beauty. One color blue, one color red, one musical note, may be nice, but it will become monotonous. The beauty of life is the harmony within diversity, the e pluribus unum. And when you have that higher presence, that transcendent element, and each of us is part of that bigger picture, that's when you have the full-bodied system, organism. And that's what we human beings are able to achieve. The difference is musical notes don't have free will. They're not going to jump off a sheet of music and each do their own thing. We have that choice. What we should be looking for in our government officials, our leaders, our politicians, is to serve us in this way. And we need to demand that. They shouldn't be telling us what to do. We should be telling them what we need from you. You make sure that each of us can live lives, live up to our potential, live up to our divine mission, our calling, be able to build homes and families. When there's a crisis, the crisis affects us all. All of us are vulnerable to it. Let us find ways to be able to transcend our differences and find that inner unity. I know that the candidates we have are not necessarily either of them going to be able to, are even proposing this. I mean, politicians say whatever they say. You don't really see our politicians being spiritual leaders, to put it mildly. However, that doesn't mean we shouldn't expect them, we shouldn't demand, because we get closer there. And most importantly, we don't get distracted by sideshows and by distorted elements that have nothing to do with the ultimate welfare of the human being. And I specifically spoke about this from a perspective that is not a political perspective, not an economic perspective, not in any way a man-made perspective, but more about who we are as human beings. And it would be good to sit down with children. Yes, I know they don't vote, and they don't even know what voting is or electing and elections are. But children can teach us truths that sometimes we don't recognize ourselves. They teach us when the emperor has no clothes. And they teach us what real clothes are, which is love, nurturing, the spirit to be able to be the best you can be in living up to the calling and the mission that you were sent here for. So maybe this is a refreshing type of message you're not going to hear on CNN or on Fox or in the Washington Post or the Los Angeles Times or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. But so be it. That's why we have these platforms. Social media could also be used for good things, not just to perpetuate myths or perpetuate people's particular agendas and so on. It's meant to be able to, we can talk to each other heart to heart, soul to soul, person to person, and come away better people and not be affected and polluted by that environment that is so much trying to suck us in to its own vortex, each in their own particular way. God bless you all. May we live up to the calling for which we were sent here, and may government, in any form or fashion, live up to its role in helping us achieve, creating the environment and the platform for us to achieve what we need to achieve. We're here every Sunday, 3 p.m. It's all being recorded as well, so archived, you can see it. Please share, please comment, please read all the different things we do in the social media. I don't even know the whole list. And it's always an honor to speak to you, always an honor to share. And I see this as an interactive experience. So please, I'd love to hear from you. Everyone be well, and may we experience true peace and harmony and be able to see, even though we may disagree, see a deeper truth and a harmony that comes from within the diversity. Thank you so much.